You remember hydroxychloroquine? Hydroxychloroquine was that cure for coronavirus, or was a treatment for coronavirus that was showing very promising results. And then there was a study that came out that said it was really actually dangerous and bad. And that study came out after Trump had publicly supported hydroxychloroquine. Well, now that Trump has stopped publicly supporting hydroxychloroquine, hydroxychloroquine is good again. It's okay. Now that Trump's not talking about it, actually, it's healthy for you. The Lancet and another medical journal, the New England Journal of Medicine, issued an expression of concern, each of them, for studies that were co-authored by Dr. Sapan Desai, and Desai is the one who raised the alarm about hydroxychloroquine. It's hard to look at all of this and not think it's just arbitrary, right? It's hard to look at the charges in Minnesota and say, you're not basing this on there isn't any new evidence. You're just doing it because the mob says so and you're moved by those emotions. Hydroxychloroquine, when Trump was touting it, you said it was really bad. Then when Trump stopped touting it, you say it's really good again. Beyond hydroxychloroquine, look at what the public health officials have done. The Pennsylvania Health Secretary, Dr. Rachel Levine, I present this to you. First, I will point out the obvious, which is that the Health Secretary of Pennsylvania is a man who thinks he's a woman, and he goes by Rachel Levine. That is obviously an ironic circumstance. That's not actually the absurd aspect of the situation that I want to draw your attention to. I want to draw your attention to what he is saying that many other public health officials are saying too, which is they're answering our question. Why is it that if you walked outside, even for a little bit, even just to go down the street and get groceries, 3 weeks ago you were endangering public health in the deadly virus, but today if you gather in crowds of hundreds of thousands, you're not endangering public health as long as you're rioting and protesting and hanging out with leftists. Why is it that when you go to church, it's endangering public health, but when you're protesting and smashing windows and stealing Nikes, you're not endangering public health? The PA health secretary, with a completely straight face, gives the answer.
Secretary, Dauphin County just moved to yellow on May 29th. Which means no large gatherings. And apparently there's a march going on that has more than 200 people in it today in Dauphin County. Can you clarify the administration's position on May 11th? Business owners were called cowards for wanting to reopen their businesses, and today the governor is actually marching in that. Is that not in violation of your order and his order for large gatherings?
Well, so we have, then the governor has always said that people have the right to protest and to demonstrate and the right of free speech. And so overall, we want large gatherings such as maybe a party or some type of concert or something to be under 250 people. But we are not restricting people's right to protest. There are also obviously significant social issues, that are present, that people feel that they need to have a voice, and so the governor is always supportive of that and is participating in that.
So let me distill that down for you. If the people are doing something that the Democrats support, it's fine, and if the people are doing something that the Democrats don't support, it's not fine. That was the kind of long, rambling answer. I also love now that these Democratic leaders are so in favor of free expression. That's not what I was hearing from them a few weeks ago during the anti-lockdown protests. During the anti-lockdown protests, I heard this is going to kill grandma. This is going to kill lots of people. You've got to stay home. It's selfish. It's a wrong version of freedom. But now that the hundreds of thousands of people in all sorts of municipalities are protesting based on a lie, right? Based on the lie that there is this scourge, this epidemic of police officers killing innocent black men around the country. Not happening. We went through it on the show yesterday. It simply is not taking place. Even when you look last year at the number of unarmed black men killed by police officers, and by the way, unarmed does not mean not dangerous, but even the number of unarmed, what's the number? 9,000? No. 900? No. 90? No. The answer is 9. And many of them were, virtually all of them, were posing a threat to the police officer. Not saying that every death isn't a tragedy. Every death is a tragedy, but that is not evidence of systemic slaughter. So going out and rioting and killing people, now killing more people in the riots than were killed as a matter of unarmed black men last year by police, doing that is perfectly acceptable because why? Because the Pennsylvania health secretary said so. He is not the only one. There is an open letter from over 1,200 public health expert scientists saying that, yeah, the other kinds of protests that were conservative are bad, but these riots and protests are essential for public health. Open letter advocating for an anti-racist public health response to demonstrations against systemic injustice occurring during the COVID-19 pandemic. At least the scientific experts acknowledge it here. They say, on April 30th, heavily armed, give me a break, and predominantly white protesters, well, that's terrible. White people can't protest, entered the state capitol building in Lansing, Michigan, protesting stay-at-home orders and calls for widespread public masking to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Infectious disease physicians and public health officials publicly condemned these actions and privately mourned the widening rift between leaders in science and a subset of the communities that they serve. That's the first part. Second part, as of May 30th, we are witnessing continuing demonstrations in response to ongoing, pervasive, and lethal institutional racism, set off by the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, among many other black lives taken by police. Many other. We went through the numbers just a few seconds ago. Not many other when we're talking about this kind of specific injustice. A public health response to these demonstrations is also warranted, but this message must be wholly different from the response to white protesters resisting stay-at-home orders. So they're actually saying, yeah, I know they look the same. Well, they don't look the same because the anti-lockdown protesters were completely peaceful and then went home and very respectful. And these rioters are killing people and torching cities. But, you know, okay, they're both protesting. But we need to treat the really peaceable, nice ones in the American tradition horribly. And we need to treat the rioters wonderfully. That's what we're being told. They say white supremacy is a lethal public health issue that predates and contributes to COVID-19. Is it now? Nobody here is defending white supremacy. I don't know. It's the whole thing. It's like nobody thinks that black lives don't matter. Nobody is defending white supremacy. How many white supremacists are there? Not too many. I don't think. But does anybody think it's a public health issue? I don't. And even if you thought it were a public health issue, do you think it contributes to COVID-19? You know, we don't know a whole lot about this virus. Some people say it's transmitted by air. Some people say it's transmitted on surfaces. No one says it's transmitted by white supremacy, okay? I haven't seen a scientific paper on that. They go on. Protests against systemic racism, which fosters the disproportionate burden of COVID-19 on black communities and also perpetuates police violence, must be supported. So according to public health science, can't debate science, you can't refute science. According to science, we need to keep rioting and torching cities. Signed by 1,288 public health professionals. What this letter tells me is that I should never again listen to public health professionals because it's obvious that they're charlatans. It's obvious that they have no idea what they're talking about anything. And it's obvious that they are using their credential to weigh in on a subject that has absolutely nothing to do with their credential. Doesn't really teach me that because, frankly, I've known it for a long time. But I think it shows the rest of us that now. Public health officials are now saying it is good to riot and coronavirus won't spread if you do riot. But if you protest for your civil liberties, that would be a very bad thing. And by the way, they go further. I kid you not, they go further in the New York Times. They say, if the police break up the riots, then coronavirus will spread. Not the hundreds of thousands of people pouring in next to one another. Then they're immune somehow. But when the cops break it up, because, as the New York Times says, there are corrosive effects of tear gas that could intensify the coronavirus pandemic. Tear gas. So cops got to stay home. The scientists said so. And the scientists, they know what they're talking about because they have PhDs. Thank you for tuning into the Daily Wire, one of the fastest growing conservative media outlets in the country. If you enjoyed this video, and really, even if you didn't, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on any of our content.